We're live. Okay, so far right side we put our first and last name. We put the date, August 16th. On the far left side, here's what we're going to put. The first thing is I want you to put the title up there. There's the title on the objective. Today I'm calling it Life as a Leader. Yay or nay? Some people like to be in charge of something. Some people are like, no, I'd rather just not be in charge, but I'll still help. I like to be in charge of the classroom. I like to teach, so I'm kind of in charge of the class. I like to be in charge of my basketball team. That's why I coach. I like to be in charge of a family. In charge of a big business, I don't know if that's my thing, where you have like all these people that you have to talk to and make sure they're all on task. Some people like to be a leader, some people don't. How many of you would say, for the most part, I would like to kind of be in charge and make sure things get done right? Just raising your hand. How many of you are more like, you know what, I'm totally willing to let someone else be the leader and I'll help? That's probably more me. Some things, I'll be the leader. We got 4 objectives. Okay, here is number 1. It says you're going to be able to recognize the hardships President Washington and Americans faced as a country. The American Revolution is over. Okay, this is the point in history we're at. The Revolution is over. The Americans have defeated the British, and we're kind of at the point now of what do we do now? I mean, the British have always kind of told us what to do. How do we do this? Okay, so the British are gone, and number 1, we have problems right away. It's almost like the British should have just stayed. But then John McReynolds would be really happy about that, so we don't want that. Number 2, the thing I want you to learn is understand why George Washington was chosen to be the first president. He had some really good characteristics that made him a great leader. Okay? Third thing I want you to understand is that this guy, Alexander Hamilton, had some plans to help America get out of debt. Yes, we're still in debt, but 200 years ago, we were really in debt. Okay? Alexander has some plans. We need to figure out those plans. And then the last thing, number 4, is understand how and why America broke into political parties. Does anyone raising your hand know the 2 major political? There are more than 2, but what are the 2 today? Sonia, 1. Democrats and Republicans. We didn't have all those until something happened that you're going to learn about today. We didn't have that. Okay? So here we go. What I want to do first, Command and Control, is go to that first video. Don't play it yet, but it's like a 1-minute video. It's like really an 8-minute video, but we're only going to watch 1 minute. And it kind of gives you a quick idea about the beginning of our lesson so you can just visually see it. Okay? You don't have to write anything. Just check it out. Hit it, Cece.
The President and Congress begin to set up the new government. Why does it matter? The strength of the U.S. today is due to the decisions of the founders about how to organize our government. In 1789, George Washington takes office. Washington was the top vote getter. John Adams received the 2nd highest number of votes to become vice president. In April, he headed north to New York City, the new nation's capital. April 30th, 1789, Washington and Adams were inaugurated or sworn in as president and vice president. Washington was in a uniquely difficult position. He knew every action he took would set a precedent. Initially, they couldn't even agree on what to call him. The debate in Congress over His Excellency or His Highness and other things, it lasted over a month, finally settling on Mr. President. Congress had many other differences to settle on how to run things. For instance, organizing the courts. The Constitution left many things.
Okay, so that's the big thing today. Washington's in charge now. The British are gone. He's got a lot of obstacles. One obstacle you saw in the video is we don't even know what to call this guy who's in charge of our country. It's that bad. Like, we have major, major problems, but we don't even know what to call the guy who's in charge of fixing the major, major problems. Is Your Highness? Dutch? What do we call this? It took, how long did it say, the video say it took to come up with a name to call President Washington?
A month.
It took a month to figure that out. Okay, so when you see these problems on the next slide, I don't know how long that's going to take, but if it takes a month to call him president, we're in trouble. Okay, will you take us to the PowerPoint? It is a lot, kids, okay? Okay, so it says, before we start today's lesson, let's pretend you have been elected class president. You don't need to write any of this yet. Just for the sake of this lesson, you're class president. In your opinion, What are 5 things about you, 5 strengths about you that would have people voting for you to be class president? And put those in your spiral, it says. Just bullets, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Most of us have more than 5 qualities, but all of us have really good qualities that could make you the leader of something. What do you have about you? Maybe it's honest, hardworking. Maybe you know when to have fun and when to get back to hardworking. Any 5. Responsible, word of the week. Respectful. Does anyone want to share one? What do you got?
Adaptable.
Adaptable. I mean, he can be in different situations and he can kind of relate to it quickly. Yeah?
Honest.
Honest. Gotta have honesty in leadership.
I mean, obviously the smartest.
Smarts, yeah. Need to be smart. And one more?
Organized.
Organized. These are all really good. Last one.
Quick thinking.
Quick thinking. I mean, sometimes these situations pop up right away, and again, we don't have time to make that push-pull chart. We need to have a quick, good decision. Here we go. It says, before we start today's lesson, I'm actually going to appoint a class president, just for the sake of this lesson, and a class treasurer. It says, as class president and class treasurer, I am going to consider you to be honest, just like some of you put on your papers. Hardworking. I'm going to consider you respected and responsible, trustworthy, well-liked, humble, and in my opinion, this might be the most important of them all, willing to fail, yet correct it appropriately. Every leader makes a mistake at some point. But how do you respond after making the mistake? Do you make another one? Do you make another one? Do you make 7 of them before you fix it? One of the great quotes that I've heard is about a boxer. Says, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. Raising your hand, does anyone know what the rest of it is? It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down.
You get back up.
It's how many times you get back up. And a good leader will always get back up and do the best that they can. So I'm going to appoint Spencer as class president. A small sign language clap. And we are going to appoint Tegan as Secretary of Treasury. So one thing you might want to get in your note is that Secretary of Treasury is the person that basically deals with money. On our campus, Miss Sarah would basically be the Secretary of Treasury. She's in charge. So make sure you know what Secretary of Treasury is. That's it from that slide. So when we get into this lesson, every time it says President George Washington, it's Spence Man. And every time it talks about our Secretary of Treasury, Alex Hamilton, it's Tegan Man. Let's see how great they lead our country now that the British are gone. Here we go. Who did that? Me? Command and Control. I have it. Here we go. It says, our story starts off with George Washington, a.k.a. Spence. George Washington becoming the first president of the United States, and like all U.S. presidents, he immediately is faced with problems. Okay? When our next president comes, whoever it is, whether it's Clinton or whether it's Trump, they've got things right away that they want to fix, probably because of the president before them, or maybe even the president before them. Every president has things they want to fix and has issues and problems they have to fix right away. It's not any different for George Washington. Day one, I can see banners across his office, happy first day. I can see Martha Washington giving him his lunch at the front door and giving him a little kiss on the cheek. Hope you have a great day, hubby. There he goes to his first day as president. And there's major, major problems. Let's look at number 1, A. Here's a problem, Spence. How are you going to fix this, George Washington? We currently owe $52 million in war debt. Isn't it great to be leader? Sometimes we said sometimes it's good to be a leader, sometimes it's not so good. Miss Hoffman has good days, Miss Hoffman probably has bad days. I have good days, I have bad days. So we need to know problem 1. We owe $52 million because of war debt. One more time, here's a pretty intelligent question. What war do we owe all that money from? Raising your hand. Yes? You? The Revolution. We defeated the British. It cost us a lot of money, roughly $52 million, but it was worth it because we're free and independent now. That's a big one. Here's another problem for you, Spence man. How about this one? This one might be even worse than the money situation. B, the United States has very little respect from foreign countries. They kind of think we're a joke. Oh, America, that cute little country, somehow they beat the British, but what have they ever done? They haven't done anything. They're not going to amount to much. Foreign countries don't respect us. No one wants to trade with us. We've done nothing. And then C, it gets a little bit worse here, is the United States has very little respect from its own American citizens. Some people thought the British should still be in charge. You know what? It's better than not knowing who our leader is going to be. It did take us a month to figure out to call him even president. Maybe it was better that the British just stayed. We got three major problems. Money, other countries don't respect us, and some American citizens don't even respect us. Any questions over that slide? Do we kind of all get that slide? Can we check it off our list? I thought I taught it phenomenal. You have a question?
No, are you moving on now?
I'm moving on. It's also right there. If you see right here, for anyone, P1, that means paragraph 1. This is all from paragraph 1, if that helps. And then I can always go back at the end. All right, here we go. This one, we need to get just a few of these. So why was George Washington elected? This is one of our objectives. What was it about that guy? Now, here's what I noticed. First hour, when I was reading these qualities, it reminds me of someone I know pretty well. Let's go through them and maybe you'll know what I'm talking about. George Washington was wanted and elected as president because he was quiet. Simple. Complicated problems come up, he kept it simple. Good in the wilderness, courageous, respected. War veteran, that's cool. Trusted, and maybe this is the last one that will give it away. Handsome. Does anyone know who Washington kind of reminds you of? Who?
My dad.
That's in this room, maybe? Nico?
You mean like obvious notes. You maybe?
Yeah, there's a few people that have some of these.
A couple of them, like maybe war veteran.
Few people have some of these qualities. I have a lot.
Oh, I got it.
Okay, so I would get in a few of these. You don't have to write every single one, but get a few of these things that made Washington so well liked. And that's what we need. We need someone who is well liked, someone who can keep things quiet, simple, courageous, respected, because our country is in shambles right now. The British are gone. We kicked their butt, but now we're in charge, and we've never been in charge of our own country. That's why Washington's going to step up and say, I got this. Any questions on the type of man Washington was? Yeah.
It's kind of like Coach.
Thank you. Make sure I deduct points. Okay, so here's a big one. Here's a biggie. We talked about Spence, and Spence has those three major problems. Now let's get to Teagan. Spence does something that most presidents do. Here's what it says. It says, President Washington, Spencer, decides to appoint Alexander Hamilton, Teagan, to fix a lot of the United States' problems. Here, you do it. I'm going to help. I'm going to let you have some say in this. So he appoints Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of Treasury to fix a lot of the U.S. financial problems at this time. Here's a big line right here that's going to start. Alexander Hamilton believed in. This is why Washington picked him. Hamilton believed in three things. One, a strong national government. Strong national government that should have a lot of power. Okay? At this time, a lot of the people thought each state should have the power. Oh, Massachusetts, you can do what you want. Oh, Connecticut, you can kind of make up what laws you want. Pennsylvania, what you want. Hamilton didn't believe that. He believed that there should be one strong national government that kind of tells the states what they can and can't do. I like that one. I give that one a check mark. B, Hamilton also thought about, yikes, creating and using tax money to help pay off war debt. You might not get a lot of help on that one. Okay, Okay, so he wanted to create new taxes to help pay off some of that $52 million in war debt. All right, I'm back from the phone call. So B here, let's think about this. Creating using taxes. If we asked your parents, Mom, Dad, what do you think about if the government added a new tax? They would probably say no. Most people don't like the idea of taxes. But let's think about this. George Washington, end of the Revolutionary War, Alexander Hamilton. What would you do to raise money to pay off $52 million? You can't raise your hand and say, let's do a car wash. Let's do a horse wash. Anyone can just pull up with their horses and we'll wash their horses. You can't do a cookie fundraiser. What can you?
Like scones or cakes or tea.
You could make scones to pay off $52 million.
Lemonade.
That's a lot of scones. Yeah.
Lemonade.
It's a lot of lemonade.
Raise the prices on them.
Raise the prices or raise the tax.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, so there's real. I mean, we're thinking about this and we're saying, oh no, not taxes. But what's the alternative? Okay, and then C, another thing that Tegan or Alexander Hamilton believed in was creating a national bank and setting up one kind of money. Because check this, Bubbles. Massachusetts had like its own money. And if you travel to Pennsylvania, guess what Pennsylvania has? Its own money. If you go from Massachusetts to Pennsylvania with your Massachusetts money, do they want your Massachusetts money? Every state kind of had their own currency. So Hamilton's plan was, we got to scratch that. We need one kind of money that you can use in any of the 13 states. That's brilliant, right? So A, I'm all for a strong national government. I don't think each state should make up whatever they want. B, sounds bad, but what's the other choices? And C, yeah, I think we need this at this time. Does everyone understand this slide? You got it, what Hamilton believes? All right. Over here we have our George Washington. His hair was not always white. He actually powdered it quite often to make it look white, because white hair, and that's why I have some in mine, is a sign of wisdom and old age. And this is our friend, so this is Spence. Spence, I can see your same jawline actually. You and him have, sit like him real fast. Perfect. And Tegan, I can see the same hairline up here. Can you show me?
Go like this.
Perfect. All right, here we go. So we're talking about this real fast. That was a little bit of a writing break. Let's look at this one. This is the big whoa, 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 the taxes, right? The American response to Hamilton's plans. Here we go, Tegan. The American response to your plans was not good. Not good at all. In fact, many Americans openly began protesting and fighting against it. For example, in the Whiskey Rebellion. So here I'm getting ready to explain to you what the Whiskey Rebellion is. This was a major situation where American citizens were fed up with somebody's plans of taxing. Oh, you're not off the hook, Mr. Washington. You let him think of the plan.
Yes.
That's a good answer. So here's what happened looking at letter A. We're talking about Western Pennsylvania. Western Pennsylvania, we're talking about farmers refusing to pay a mandated tax on whiskey. They have to pay it. The government made the tax. They have to pay it on whiskey. Now, whiskey is one of the big supplies at this time. Like in the Civil War, we're talking about slavery, we're talking about cotton, we're talking about tobacco. At this time, we're talking about whiskey. Big money, okay? Western Pennsylvanians had to pay a tax. They refused to. B, the farmers' response throughout the colonies was to beat up the tax collector. This is a government worker riding on horseback throughout the colonies, going farm to farm, store to store to collect the tax money. And throughout the colonies, he was getting beat up. This is a federal crime. And threatened more revolts. Is anyone in here familiar with the term, raising your hand of course, tar and feather? That person was tarred and feathered. You are, because I taught it first hour. You are? What is it?
Isn't it like the really, really hot tire that you pour on someone and then you take like feathers and you dump on them?
Good, you nailed it. You nailed it, so I'm going to stick with you. Why do they do that?
It's a form of punishment because it hurts
Okay.
really bad.
So here's what tar and feather is. We would have these Western Pennsylvania farmers, farmer here, and this guy right here would be a government worker. His job by the U.S. government, President Washington, Alexander Hamilton sends him to go collect the whiskey tax money. Farmers refuse to. We're not doing it. So here's what happens. They basically beat him up. They pour hot wax on him, hot tar, and then they roll him around in feathers. And they send him marching back to their government office as a message to the government saying, if you send these people around, this is what's going to happen to your people. We're not paying this stupid tax. That's a pretty good message, huh? So this was happening all over to government workers, tax collectors. Let me go back to that slide for you. The Whiskey Rebellion, Western Pennsylvania, they had to pay the tax. They refused to pay the tax. They're getting tarred and feathered as a message to the government, to you, Mr. Hamilton, to you, Mr. Washington, your tax is dumb. Does everyone understand this slide? Anyone have a question or comment on this slide? Yes.
So they dumped him in wax?
They would I don't know if they dumped him, but somehow they would beat him up and be able to roll him in tar and then roll him in the feathers.
Normally they have it in a bucket and they just pour it on.
Like a little stick or like a ladle. What's that? I'm not good with my kitchen stuff. Spatula kind of thing and drip it on them. Yeah.
I saw a picture in the book and it showed like the same thing, but they're also pouring hot tea down his throat.
Okay, so they were trying to scorch his throat. Good. Just as a message. Here we go. We already saw this again. Here's our government worker, and here's what's happening because they ain't paying. This slide's pretty important. It's not a whole lot here, but it's pretty important. Why was the Whiskey Rebellion important? The Whiskey Rebellion was important because for the very first time, the United States government was going to have to prove itself. They have to. The British are gone, right? Who's in charge of the United States if the British are gone? The United States. So here's is the United States government going to allow this? Right here? Are they going to allow the tar and feathering to continue to happen? No. The American government, this is the very first time, they have to step up and put an end to it. If they don't put an end to it, what happens? Raising your hand, what happens? Tegan?
Another war?
No. If they don't put an end to this tar and feathering and this mistreating and not paying the taxes, what's going to happen?
They won't get like respect.
They won't get respect.
And they won't pay off the debt.
They won't pay off the debt. They'll just keep doing this. This is the first situation the American government has to step up and put an end to how they're disrespecting the government. It's not an option to pay the tax. When my income taxes come and it's tax time, do I have an option? No, let me think about this. I really don't want to do it this year. Is that an option for me? No. The government, because of the Whiskey Rebellion, steps up and puts an end to it, and for the first time shows it strong. All because of Mr. Washington. Whiskey Rebellion, something like 6 arrests. I forget the exact number. Anywhere from 6 to 12 arrests took place in Western Pennsylvania. Anyone have a guess on how many troops that Washington sent to put that rebellion down?
1,300.
13,000.
13,000.
That was a sign of force. That was intentional by Washington. He's sending 13,000 troops as a message back to them. You ain't doing this. You ain't doing this, or we're going to show up every single time. Okay? So for the very first time, the American government is actually looking strong now that the British are gone. Does everyone understand why the Whiskey Rebellion is important?
I have a question about what, so tar, is that the stuff that fills the crack?
Yeah, basically on the road, yeah.
So it hardens, that's why
It's sticky and it will harden. Yeah?
Are they supposed to copy all of this?
I already know this. If you don't know it, you can write it down.
But you're like something.
Are you trying to write every single word? That's the problem. We don't have time to do every single word, all the its and the ofs. Okay? So here we go. The Whiskey Rebellion is important because it's the first time that the government has had to step up. Yeah, we got quite a bit more, guys. We're definitely more than halfway. Okay? I'd say we're about 3/4 of the way. Here's our next thing. Raising your hand, who can tell me the 3 problems that Washington had? This guy. 1 problem. Yes.
We have to pay up $52 million.
$52 million in debt. Brett.
We had little respect from foreign countries.
Little respect from foreign countries and
Little respect from citizens.
little respect from our own American citizens. Here is the last problem we need to know. A 4th problem for President Washington was what to do with land called the Northwest Territory. And we're going to draw a little mappy right here. They're not letting command and control in charge of the drawing. Draw this real fast somewhere. 7th grade history, you draw the United States a lot. Okay? Draw that. Fourth problem. Let me explain it on here on the board, and then you can go back and reading it, okay? I'm going to make it simple. Raising your hand, we can put a line right here. What do we call this land right here at this time? The original
13 colonies.
13 colonies. Let's label that. This land right now is called the original 13 colonies. So here's the section of land that we're talking about now. It says the 4th area of concern for President Washington was land known as the Northwest Territory. So on our drawing, like right about here, just make a little square, and that is our Northwest Territory. Washington has to figure out, what do we do with this piece of land? And here's what the problem is. I kind of think of it as a gang fight. I've never been in a gang fight. I've never been in a gang, but I assume this is what a gang fight's like. Let's look at letter A. Britain. Remember those guys we defeated in the American Revolution? We kicked their butts out of here? Well, in the Northwest Territory, Britain gave it up, but still kept some of their troops there. Why are they there if we beat them? So on my map, what we did in the last hours, we just did this. In the Northwest Territory, we just put B all over. There's British people still in the Northwest Territory even after we fought a whole war and beat them. What are they doing here? Okay, let's look at the second problem, B. The Native Americans, remember the proper term? The Native Americans began setting up nations, that's like tribes. The Native Americans began setting up tribes with the help of the British. The British and Native Americans are now BFFs, when the British shouldn't even be here. So here's what we did in the last hour in our Northwest Territory. We put little N's right by the B's because they are buddies. President Washington, you've got to be scratching, what in the world is going on? We had men lose their lives in the name of fighting for our country and freedom and independence, and some of the enemy is still here. What are you doing? We're not done with this problem. Let's look at letter C. Now we have white settlers who want to move into that area and begin building homes. So all these white American colonists, W's, they want to move in there. You see why it's a gang war, kind of? This ain't good. But what does Washington do, being that war veteran, that hero, that respected, responsible, handsome leader? Right down here on the bottom, once again, just like at the Whiskey Rebellion, Washington sends troops right away. He doesn't wait. Right away, this situation has to come to an end. We're sending the government. So kind of the same thing with the Whiskey Rebellion. The government shows up. Things are going good under the control and leadership of Spencer. Raising your hand. Did anyone ever doubt Spencer? No, don't raise your hand. Okay, Nico did. Send the government. Send 12,000 troops.
I just want to attack him.
All right, any questions over this fourth problem, which is a big, complicated, like I said, I call it a gang war. $52 million in debt. Other countries don't respect us. We don't respect ourselves. And now we've got a big problem in the Northwest Territory. Do we get that? Whole bunch of writing today, huh? Go ahead and say, Mr. Flegel, but you're teaching it good.
Mr. Flegel, but you're teaching it good.
You get extra credit, sir. We got one. We got one person to say it. No. Now you're kissing up. Now you're kissing up. Too late. Okay, we don't need to draw this. That's our map that we did over here. Don't need to do that again. Last 2 slides. Things were going good, right? Things are going good. It was bad to start, but Washington's kind of got things under control. He's put down the Whiskey Rebellion. He's kind of putting down the Northwest Territory problem. Things are kind of good. Maybe it was okay that the British are gone. Problem again. Right here. So after 8 years of being president, George Washington decides to retire. All that hard work to get our country started by such a great man, and now, poof, he's gone. It says here, almost immediately after his retiring, 2 political parties are formed. Basically, 2 groups think they can run the country better than Washington. Now we have this conflict with each other on who can run the country better. Just stay president forever, Washington. So 2 groups think they can run the country better than Washington. One group are called the Federalists. Who was in charge of the Federalists? John Adams. Okay, and this is just like a political party today. I mean, I look at one political party today and I'm like, oh, I like what they're saying. Ooh, but I hate what they're saying there. And then I go to the other side. Ooh, I like what they're saying, but I don't like what they're saying there. It's like no side is perfect, right? Let's look at the Federalists. It says, number 1, the main goal of the Federalists was to have a strong national government. Boom, I'm all for that. Thumbs up for me. And supported the British. Wait, why are we supporting the British when we just beat them in the Revolutionary War? So they're not getting my vote yet. Okay, Federalist John Adams, yeah. Let's look at our other choice. B, the Democratic Republicans, led by Thomas Jefferson, goes by the street name T. Jeff. Main goal was to have a smaller national government. That's a thumbs down for me. And they supported France. Okay, so that's a thumbs up. None of these sound good. It sounds like we're going to have more future problems after all the work that Spencer, George Washington did. Alexander Hamilton, you helped a little bit, but you also started the Whiskey Rebellion. Okay, so none of these political parties are going to please every single American, kind of like today. Any questions over these 2 groups or why we even have these 2 groups? Yeah.
Is this going to be in a quiz?
Yeah, it's not for fun. I did not type this up just to make sure I did not get a chance to play with my kids. I typed it up here because I wanted you guys to know it, and you need to know it. Two political groups. Federalists led by Adams. They have some goods and bads in my opinion. Democratic Republicans led by Thomas Jefferson. They have some goods and bads in my opinion. Last slide. It gets worse. Check out this, okay? So let's remember this. John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson. Winner gets to be president, right? Winner gets to be president because Washington's gone. Let's check this out. It's either Adams or Jefferson. One of them will get to be president. It says here, here's an awkward moment. The election of 1800 was between Adams and Jefferson. I just said that. And here's what happened. It says, John Adams wins presidency. But, one of my favorite words, ironically, his competition, Jefferson, received enough votes and is going to become his vice president. Adams has to work with his enemy, Jefferson. How is this going to make our country better? When two enemies, two rivals, two people that just went against each other in presidency now have to work together. This could make things bad again. We were doing so good with Washington. Washington leaves. Now we have two political parties. And now the leaders of those political parties have to work together. You guys know that person, that we all have someone in our life who, it might be here, it might be somewhere else, that we don't really like get along with. And every time you talk, there's like a problem or a woohoo, right here. The leaders of our country are having it just right here at the top of your desk. That way we don't have people walking around in the middle class. That's exactly what's going on right here. Adams goes to work every single day, turns around, and oh, shoot, Mr. Jefferson, you're here. And that's who's going to lead our country into the next phase. Any questions about this ironic, weird twist to our second president?
Instant president is so connected.
Okay, last slide. You have to write none of this. It's just a quick review. Raise your hand if you have the answers, okay? Who can tell me all four problems that America has at this time? All four, one.
So they had $52 million in debt from the
Debt. Bingo.
We didn't know what to do with the Northwest Territory.
Awesome. Northwest Territory. What are we doing with that? Who can name a third? Yeah.
They had a little more respect for cities, but not.
Right. The Americans had little respect for our country. Who can name the last?
Other countries didn't respect us.
Other countries didn't respect us. Good. I think we all understand number one, at least the four people that raised their hands. Number two. What are some things about George Washington? We put a whole list in there. Let's name four. Britt, one.
Courageous.
He was courageous.
Quiet.
Quiet.
Simple.
Simple.
Handsome.
Handsome. War veteran.
Trusted.
Trusted. Awesome. I think if you guys know that one, cross that one off in your head. You know that one. Number three, what were Hamilton's plans? He kind of had three ideas to help fix our problems. One, tax. Britt?
Create a national bank to set a standard.
Good. A national bank, so we have one kind of money, and what's the third?
Get a federal government, meaning the government should have a lot of power.
Good. He believed in a strong national government. And our last one, if you know all four of these, you had an A. I told you today was a big day. I told you you're going to have to fight for today, even if we're not having the greatest afternoon. I feel like you guys fought, so if you know these, awesome, you will be rewarded on your next quiz. Number four, why do we have political parties? What basically started that? When what happened?
When George Washington retired.
Basically, when Washington resigned, other people think they can do his job just as good as him. If Miss Hoffman were to resign, I'm sure there would be people say, oh, I can do this, I got this. No, I can do this. No, I can do it. If Mr. Flegel was to resign and quit tonight, which I've thought about that many nights, just kidding. There could be like 7 job applications. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can teach that class. Oh, I can do that. and maybe it causes more problems. What?
Can you go back to paragraph?
I will at the very end. So if you feel like you got all 4 of those, you understand them and you have the information in your spot, you did well. It was a big day. I'm going to give you like a 2-minute break to stretch your hands, stretch your fingers, and I have one more little video. All you have to do is watch it though, okay? 2-minute break now. Okay, so one quick video. Again, this is about the Whiskey Rebellion. The guy's going to kind of draw pictures and talk to you about the Whiskey Rebellion. I'm hoping some of these pictures you'll remember it. You'll remember what he's saying, and you'll get 1 or 2 questions on the quiz right that maybe you thought you'd forgotten, okay? So 3 minutes video, is that what it says, 3:11? Hit it, command.
Welcome back, class. Now, one of the earliest tests of the U.S. Constitution was the Whiskey Rebellion from 1791 to 94. What is the Whiskey Rebellion? Well, first off, it's not when you drink too much Jack Daniels and your stomach rebels against you. We better start at the Articles of Confederation. Under the Articles, some of the states, like Massachusetts, had accrued massive debts which those individual states were responsible for. When the country decided to ditch the Articles in favor of the Constitution, these debts gave the new national government a credit score worse than a college freshman with a Visa, Amex, and H&M card. Alexander Hamilton knew the best way to deal with these debts was through assumption, which meant all states' debts would be consolidated into one national debt. Yes, 13 states like Virginia complained about having to pay other states' debts, but it's funny how people get on board when you promise to place the capital in their backyard. So it's 1791 and time to pay the national debt of $75 million, which was about $2 billion back then. First, Hamilton turned to everyone's favorite topic, tariffs. Ugh, I know students hate hearing about tariffs, but they really are important. They allow the government to make money on imported goods while at the same time protecting domestic goods.
Keep it playing.
The second
Tariff
method was a
means
tax
tax.
on whiskey.
T-A-R-I-F-F.
Whiskey was kind of
That
money
means
back
tax.
then. Many Appalachian farmers distilled their excess grain into whiskey and sold it to supplement their income. Paper money was in short supply and many were skeptical of a national currency, but whiskey was readily accepted as payment. And, well, it's alcohol. America has had a sizable BAC level since the beginning, and whiskey made money. As you can imagine, many small distillers had a problem with this tax. First, they didn't like the idea of a tax on their product to pay off someone else's debt. Secondly, you either paid a flat fee or by the gallon. The large distilleries could afford the flat fee, but the smaller guys were stuck with the per gallon tax. Small operations saw this as the Constitution sticking it to the little guy. Some of those small operators in western Pennsylvania decided they weren't going to pay no stinking whiskey tax. Using techniques that echoed the Revolution, they erected liberty poles, cried about taxation, and even tarred and feathered tax collectors. Things got progressively worse in western Pennsylvania between officials and opponents of the tax. When rebel leader and Revolutionary War hero James McFarland was killed, it was on. About 7,000 protesters marched towards Pittsburgh to burn it to the ground, shouting independence and even had their own flag. But you have to remember who was president at the time. That's right, George Washington. And he was ready to show these rebels that they weren't dealing with no weak Articles of Confederation central government. This was the U.S. Constitution central government. All in all, nearly 13,000 men of the federal militia, many drafted, were led by President Washington himself to western Pennsylvania. And as you may expect, the insurrection quickly collapsed. A handful of men were hung for the Whiskey Rebellion, but more importantly, Washington and the federal government showed that under the Constitution, they had the power to enforce the law. So that's the Whiskey Rebellion. Leave a comment on what topic you'd like to see illustrated. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.
Okay, so you could see what Spence did there. He put down the Whiskey Rebellion. Okay? That's all I've got. I do have an assignment for you, but the other 7th grade didn't get to it, so I don't want to get you guys to it and have 7th grades at different spots. So just make sure you have the notes. They're in the textbook. Shush. I could say whose name that was right now. Just make sure you understand today's lesson. You have everything that you need, okay? 2 minutes talk time, and then I need you working on something quiet. Go.